I got the job.
Yeah, we get it. They're paying what you asked for, and it runs in the family. Great, good. Now shut up so we can get back to watching our YouTube videos. Well, I've finally gotten round to doing it. Here is every theatrical animated DreamWorks movie ranked. There are many more DreamWorks movies than Pixar movies, and I kept on pausing this marathon of movies for months. But I've now seen all of them, and it's an interesting selection overall. Some of them are on par with the best Pixar movies, and others are just complete shite. And since there's a lot of them, I'm splitting the video into 2 parts. But let's rank the theatrical animated DreamWorks movies.
Oh, fuck! This is a fucking disaster!
One of the main problems with Shark Tale is that there is actually no reason for this film to take place underwater. If the characters were humans and the film took place in New York, nothing about the story would change. And just like Chicken Little, it derails a lot of plot points and jokes.
Who in the hell of it trips underwater?
Newsflash, pointing out plot holes in your film doesn't mean they're not plot holes anymore. But even if you accept this completely superfluous setting, it's not even that imaginative. It's just crawling with product placement, half-baked world building, and a load of horrible puns.
I'm Katie Current.
Muscle Crow! Jessica Schritzen! Todd Stewart!
Ha! It's funny because they're fish. Do you get the puns? Do you get the puns?
Yes!
The film is also very ugly and boring. I cannot believe anyone would approve the designs of Oscar or Lola. Ugh. Anything that's not ugly in Shark Tale is ridiculously boring to look at. It actually reminds me of the hideous art style of Video Branquedo movies. How come Finding Nemo came out in 2003 and the animation has aged like fine wine, and Shark Tale came out in 2004 and the animation looked hideous even for the time? I also dislike the characters. I think Oscar is too stupid and selfish. The first time we see him, he's monologuing about how great he is and how glad we should be to see him. Stop trying to be hip with the cool kids, Oscar, you're embarrassing yourself. At least he doesn't floss. And although he does see he was wrong, he doesn't exactly do a whole lot to redeem himself. Unlike, say, Lightning McQueen. What's also mind-boggling is how everyone believes Oscar's lie that he killed Frankie, and he instantly becomes famous, even though there was no proof of it, as well as the fact that it would probably be impossible for a fish like him to kill a much larger great white shark. And it's clear that these actors were just picked for no other reason than to sell tickets. While Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese are well cast, though I am legitimately shocked they got Scorsese to say Puff Daddy, the rest just feel out of place, with Will Smith and Renee Zellweger not bringing much to their roles, and Jack Black putting on an incredibly annoying voice. There's a lot of problems with this movie, but a big one is that it doesn't seem suited for kids or adults. It's obviously aimed towards kids because of the pointless underwater setting and juvenile humour, yet it also features themes such as gambling, loan sharks, and the mafia, which are not exactly themes that kids will understand, as well as a ton of random references to movies that most kids won't have seen, with no subtlety. The reason the cultural references work in the first 2 Shrek movies is because they're funny if you get the reference, but if not, they still work in the context of the story, which just isn't the case with Shark Tale. Is anything good? Well, this line is delivered brilliantly.
Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind?
Although most of the soundtrack consists of random pop songs, the limited amount of music composed by Hans Zimmer is actually pretty good. Just wish they used more of him, and I honestly wish this movie had used more rewrites.
Boy, you are slow.
Turbo is such a bad movie. While DreamWorks is known for taking ideas that sound stupid and going far and beyond with them, this is a stupid premise and a stupid execution. Howdy hey, this movie is not funny. I think I laughed once the entire movie. The rest is just painfully unfunny. Like Shark Tale, the film is chock-a-block with offensive stereotypes, the Mexican taco lover in particular. What's more, this film has a twist villain, and it's basically the racer that Turbo idolised for years. Once he reveals that he's the villain to Turbo, he immediately starts acting like a jerk in front of everyone, which he never did before. And what's more, having him as a villain adds nothing to the story, because he'd still be in competition with Turbo either way. The big race comes, and towards the end, all the cars have crashed, and Turbo is the only one still in the race. But he's lost his super speed. So what does he do? He gives up, despite being very close to the finish line and having no competition. Instead, he needs a pep talk from his brother to finish the race. Wow, how inspiring! Turbo is just shite, but it's better than Shark Tale, because while it is probably more stupid, it does have much better animation.
Shh, the baby's sleeping.
To think that the Lego Batman movie got snubbed for Best Animated Feature in favour of this. The first third of The Boss Baby was one of the most anxiety-inducing film experiences I've ever had. From the frequent uncomfortable imagery to the annoying characters, it was just utterly intolerable. Had the movie continued like this, it would be the worst animated DreamWorks movie, and possibly even worse than The Cat in the Hat. But, to be fair, the next two-thirds, while also terrible, weren't quite as bad. The film does maintain some creativity in the imagination sequences, and while I dislike both Boss Baby and Tim as characters, that part where the former tells the latter about how he never had a childhood and had to grow up straight away is somewhat poignant. But that's pretty much it for positives. The film does make other attempts at emotional depth, but they are just awful. The worst one being when Tim and Boss Baby argue and split up, and Tim sits in the airport moping and doping, and we're supposed to feel sad, even though it's pretty much another case of us knowing they're going to realise they were idiots and make up. Not to mention, it adds nothing to the story. Much like with Turbo, the premise and its execution are bizarre and stupid, and also maintains a confusing tone, terrible jokes, and random cultural references. The Boss Baby is a step up from Turbo, because at least it has some creativity, though not a lot, and the one somewhat poignant scene I mentioned earlier, but that in no way qualifies as a recommendation.
Hello, bro. Don't burn all my frankincense and myrrh.
This movie blows. To those who think the Shrek franchise is terrible, you have all been corrupted by this movie. The story is needlessly overstuffed, and while the two main storylines work off each other, the other storylines have no purpose. The movie has a similar problem to Frozen 2, trying to give all the established characters something new to do, and consequently producing a variety of superfluous side plots. Fiona being pregnant, Puss and Donkey switching bodies, Fiona teaming up with the princesses. All these storylines could be removed from the film, with absolutely nothing changing.
Nothing!
And so could these characters. But it's also worse than Frozen 2 in this regard, because they feel obliged to shoehorn in new characters with no impact on the story. Arthur is the only new character with any story purpose, and his and Shrek's conversation at the campfire is the one emotionally gripping scene in the whole movie. It's legitimately shocking that half the screenwriters of this film also wrote the amazing Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The difference in quality is enormous. When you look at the amazing song choices in Shrek and Shrek 2, Shrek the Third's song choices stick out like a sore thumb. Aside from Royal Pain, which fits perfectly, the songs don't fit the scenes at all. Live and Let Die plays at King Harold's funeral. This is a Bond song, by the way. After Arthur leaves and Shrek is chained up, the song 9 Crimes is playing, which is a song about infidelity. And then there's this. Not only do they butcher the timing of the scream, but then they play a completely different song. Something else they butcher is Prince Charming, who, while a good secondary villain in Shrek 2, fails miserably as the primary villain of this movie. But even the secondary and tertiary villains of this movie are terrible. They literally change alliances anytime someone gives a 2-minute speech. Like, what the fuck? And holy hell is this movie not funny. While most of the toilet humour in the first two Shrek films had context, primarily in establishing the disgusting nature of ogres, Shrek the Third just references poo and vomit every 5 minutes for cheap laughs. There's a ton of other weak jokes as well. The only jokes I remember laughing at were Pinocchio trying not to lie, and Puss trying to act cute in Donkey's body, even if the plotline it came from was completely irrelevant. Otherwise, no, I did not laugh at this movie. So yeah, Shrek the Third has a terrible script, unnecessary side plots and characters, a terrible choice of music, horrible jokes, and is honestly a massive fart on the legacy of Shrek. And, frankly, this fart would have been better in than out. Boring! Boring! I have very little to say about Spirit Untamed. I didn't really like the first one, but this one was worse, especially the animation, which looks unfinished. There is also very little connection to the original movie aside from Spirits, and the film ends exactly the same way as the original did. There's the odd funny joke, and the climax is mildly intriguing, but otherwise, this is a boring movie that I have very little to say about.
Ow! Ow! Titty twister! Ow! Hurts!
The Boss Baby family business was actually okay. For the first 10 minutes. I thought the idea that Tim was growing apart from his daughter, and the theme of growing up, wasn't too badly executed, and it still maintained some of the creative visuals that made the first Boss Baby a 2 out of 10 movie. I also like the scene where Tim, in the body of a child, helps his daughter's singing confidence. These aspects put the movie above the first Boss Baby. But the movie is still awful. As with the first movie, the tone is confusing and unbalanced, the premise is still utterly bizarre. The twist about the principal being a baby and his plan are just weird and not in a funny way. And speaking of which, the movie is not funny. There are all kinds of weird and unfunny jokes, but the worst one would be when Tim and Ted are pinching each other's chests while fighting around the house. Ugh. The Boss Baby Family Business is an improvement over its predecessor, but still a very bad movie overall, and one of those rare instances where DreamWorks clearly cared more about making money than continuing the story in a meaningful way.
Bazinga, punk, now we're even.
I did not like Home as a teenager, and rewatching it as an adult, it's probably even worse. While it does have enough good qualities to keep it above Shrek the Third or the Boss Baby duology, such as giving some good new songs and a few creative jokes and ideas, including when O modifies Tip's car to resemble a corner shop, it's mostly annoying and predictable. Many films have done the kid befriends an alien concept, including E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Lilo and Stitch, but Home feels like a much more childish and unimaginative version of the latter. Kind of like Shrek the Third, it has a single poignant scene when O and Tip are talking about her struggles to fit in and her desperation to return to her mother, but almost everything else is just crap. One of the biggest issues for me is the casting of Jim Parsons. While he was great as Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory, his voice really did not suit this character. Literally all I see is Sheldon as an alien. I probably would have cast Billy Crystal or Jack Black. I think their voices would have suited the character a lot more.
There is no secret ingredient. It's just you.
You and I are a team.
Don't feed me any more lines from Monsters, Inc. It pisses me off.
The film is painfully predictable, and uses the lie revealed bit, and it is so obvious that O is going to realise he was an idiot and reconcile with Tip. The animation is fine, but it's mostly the humans that are well animated. The alien designs really aren't that interesting. I don't really have much more to say. It's just boring, predictable, unfunny, and annoying.
I am inevitable.
Trolls World Tour was utterly bizarre, and also simultaneously boring. I was very bored for most of the movie. The last 10 minutes about how people being different makes them stand out is somewhat interesting, but otherwise, it is a very dull experience. The plot is basically Avengers Infinity War, but with music, and James Corden's bigger role was very unnecessary. And fuck this movie for having James Corden troll have a candy addiction, thus reminding me of that god-awful scene in the Emoji Movie. I have very little to say, and it's just about a step up from Home.
Meh.
This film is not so commonly remembered among other DreamWorks movies, and yeah, it's pretty boring for the most part. The animation looks great, the voice acting is good, but the story is bland and forgettable, and it brings the film down a lot here. Not awful, but not memorable either.
We said meh. M-E-H. Meh.
Trolls is another movie I don't have much to talk about, but it's not as boring as Sinbad. It's visually creative, and the song Can't Stop the Feeling is great, even if I don't understand why they auto-tuned Justin Timberlake's voice. But it's just void of interesting writing or characters. Also, why is James Corden in this?
My lovely horse running through the field.
As much as I loved Hans Zimmer's music in Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, I wanted it to replace the pop songs, which I thought were an unnecessary addition, as well as Matt Damon's narration. It's mostly just kind of boring to me. Hans Zimmer's music is great, as is the animation, and the relationship between Spirit and Little Creek is okay, but otherwise, I don't have a whole lot to say. I genuinely think conveying Spirit's thoughts through his emotions and actions would have been a lot better than giving his exposition through Matt Damon, as much as I like him. It's not awful, but I don't plan to watch it again. B-Movie is clearly best remembered as a meme, but otherwise it would probably be forgotten, because it's not actually that good of a film. DreamWorks is known for taking ideas that sound stupid and going far and beyond with them, but B-Movie is just kind of boring in its execution of its bizarre premise. Most of the jokes aren't that funny. There's the odd funny joke, and John Goodman and Patrick Warburton are hilarious in their roles. I'm trying to preside over this cod case, but I'm dummy thick, and the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the bees. But unlike in The Emperor's New Groove, they weren't paired up with that funny a script. Most of the jokes are just, haha, bees use honey for everything. And there's some other rather awkward jokes as well.
That girl was hot.
She's my cousin.
She is?
We're all cousins.
Right, you're right.
Do you live together?
Wait a minute, this
Are
isn't about...
you her little bedbug?
How about a suicide pact? I'll sting you, you step on me.
That just kills you twice.
Yeah, the film ain't that funny. And I don't think Jerry Seinfeld's voice fits Barry at all. So yeah, Some good animation, vocal performances and a couple of funny jokes, but mostly a rather mediocre film.
Why, I'm the captain.
Despite being set in the Shrek universe, Puss in Boots doesn't really feel like a Shrek movie. While the Shrek films subvert the fairy tale genre, Puss in Boots plays it dead straight. Does Puss in Boots hold up in spite of this? Well, it's not as funny or deep as the Shrek trilogy, but it certainly beats that awful fanfic that came out between Shrek 2 and Shrek Forever After. Though, come to think of it, the film just isn't that funny at all. But it has some poignancy, like when we learn the backstory of the relationship between Puss and Humpty, even if it does take up a lot of the runtime. And there is some decent action. I guess I don't have a whole lot more to say, but I guess it's a 6 out of 10, although it is closer to a 5 than a 7.
I'm a monster!
Monsters vs. Aliens is a film that I remember really enjoying as a kid. Rewatching it as an adult though, I find that even though there are some funny moments, particularly through Seth Rogen as Bob, it's not particularly unique as a film. Most of it is just fine, but nothing really to write home about.
I like to move it.
Madagascar is a comedy where some of the jokes really hit, and others don't hit so well. Similar to Shark Tale, it references quite frequently, and often just for the sake of referencing, though I did kind of like the American Beauty reference. Outside of the random cultural references, however, Madagascar is mostly pretty funny. There's a lot of jokes I laughed at, and I liked most of the casting choices. While it's not good, it's not awful, and I think I enjoyed it overall.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
Megamind never really appealed to me that much, as a teen or an adult. It is visually appealing, and has a fair amount of good comedy, but it also strikes me as unoriginal, bearing too many similarities to Despicable Me and The Incredibles, the latter of which being a far superior superhero parody in my opinion. It also features way too many predictable plot points and outcomes, especially the liar revealed bit. And if it was making fun of the liar revealed cliché, which would fit well with the film trying to be a superhero parody, then it might actually be funny. But no, they play it dead serious, and the outcome is rather predictable. Megamind is a decent kids movie, but honestly not much more. And that's part 1 of my ranking video. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be talking about the good DreamWorks movies.